September 2024. Cristiano Ronaldo clicks publish. Across Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube, the counter ticks over 1 billion. He is the first person in human history to reach a combined 1 billion social media followers. For years earlier, Forbes had declared him football's first active billionaire, crossing $1 billion in career earnings. Soon after, his legendary rival, Lionel Messi, crossed the exact same milestone. They are the two greatest players of their generation, perhaps of all time. But they are also something else, two of the most lucrative individual franchise systems on earth. Yet, follow the paper trail of those billions, and you won't just find Nike sponsorships, Adidas boot contracts, or Gulfstream private jets. You will find Spanish courtrooms. You will find Lionel Messi sitting in the dock in Barcelona, facing a demand for prison time. You will find Cristiano Ronaldo standing before a judge in Madrid, pleading guilty to tax fraud. How did the two most famous men in sports end up facing actual prison sentences? The answer is a story about how modern football stars became multinational corporations, and what happens when those corporations collide with a cash-strapped government. To understand how this war started, we have to go back to 2003, and a tax loophole that turned Spain into the ultimate football paradise. It was called the Beckham Law. Historically, Spain, like most European countries, taxed high earners heavily, with progressive rates climbing toward 50%. But in 2003, the Spanish government wanted to attract foreign researchers, scientists, and executives to boost its economy. They passed a law, officially the special tax regime for expatriates, that allowed foreign workers moving to Spain to pay a flat income tax rate of just 24% on their Spanish source income. And crucially, they paid zero Spanish tax on their foreign source income. The first superstar to benefit from this was David Beckham when he signed for Real Madrid. The law immediately took his name. For the next decade, Spain was the center of the football universe. Because of the Beckham law, Spanish clubs could offer foreign players double the take-home pay of clubs in England, Italy, or Germany for the exact same gross salary. Real Madrid built their famous Galacticos era, signing Cristiano Ronaldo and Kaká. Barcelona nurtured Lionel Messi and brought in Neymar. The Spanish league, La Liga, became the richest, most star-studded competition in sports. But then, the world changed. In 2008, the global financial crisis hit. Spain was devastated. By 2012, Spain's unemployment rate had soared past 25% and youth unemployment topped 50%. The government was facing a debt crisis, forced to implement brutal austerity measures, cutting public services, health, and education. Public anger was boiling. And at the center of the national conversation was a glaring contradiction: average Spanish citizens struggling to buy groceries, while foreign football players were earning tens of millions of dollars in their backyards, paying half the tax rate of a local school teacher. In 2010, under intense political pressure, the Spanish government amended the Beckham law. They excluded professional athletes earning over €120,000 a year. Later, in 2015, they excluded athletes from the regime entirely. Suddenly, foreign players in Spain were subject to the normal progressive tax rates. In Madrid, the top rate rose to 48%. In Catalonia, home to Barcelona, it reached 49%. For players earning 10, 20, or 30 million euros a year, their tax bills literally doubled overnight. And that is when their financial advisors turned to the offshore shell game. To understand how Messi and Ronaldo managed their fortunes, you have to understand the difference between how a player is paid. When Lionel Messi signed a contract with Barcelona, he received a salary for playing football. That salary was paid by the club, reported to the Spanish government, and taxed at the source. There was no hiding it. But players of their stature make the real fortunes from what is known as image rights. Image rights are the commercial value of a player's name, face, and personal brand. When Adidas pays Lionel Messi to wear their boots, or Pepsi pays him to appear in a television commercial, they are paying for his image rights. Under Spanish tax law, there was a rule known as the 85/15 rule. clubs were allowed to pay up to 15% of a player's total compensation as image rights, which was taxed at the corporate tax rate of around 28%, rather than the higher personal income tax rate. But the players' personal sponsorship deals with global brands like Nike, Adidas, Herbalife, and video game companies were a different story. These deals generated tens of millions of dollars outside of their club salaries. And this is where the paper trail goes cold. Or at least, where it was supposed to. Let's look at the structure Lionel Messi's advisors built. Between 2007 and 2009, Messi's father, Jorge Messi, set up a network of shell companies in tax havens. The rights to Messi's image were sold for a nominal fee to a company in Belize, which then transferred them to another company in Uruguay. Belize and Uruguay were classic tax havens. They did not tax foreign source income and had strict bank secrecy laws. When Adidas or Pepsi wanted to sign a sponsorship deal with Messi, they didn't sign a contract with Lionel Messi, the resident of Barcelona. They signed a contract with the shell company in Belize or Uruguay. The money was wired to bank accounts in South America and the Caribbean, completely bypasses the Spanish tax authorities. Spain's tax office, the Hacienda, received zero tax declarations on these millions. Now, let's look at the structure Cristiano Ronaldo's advisors built. In 2009, just before signing for Real Madrid, Ronaldo's team established a corporate structure. His image rights were assigned to a company called Tolin Associates, registered in the British Virgin Islands, a tiny Caribbean island nation famous for housing more registered companies than actual citizens. Tolin Associates had no offices, no employees, and did not conduct any actual business. It was a letterbox. But it owned the rights to Cristiano Ronaldo's face. When global brands like Nike, Tag Heuer, or Konami paid for Ronaldo's endorsements, the money was funneled to Tolin Associates in the British Virgin Islands. From Tolin, the funds were managed by marketing agencies in Ireland, which has a low 12.5% corporate tax rate, and eventually deposited into private Swiss bank accounts. Over a 6-year period, more than €150 million in sponsorship income was routed through this offshore structure. Ronaldo declared only a small fraction of this to the Spanish tax office, arguing that since the sponsorships were global, the income was earned outside of Spain and therefore exempt under the remnants of his Beckham law status. But the Spanish Hacienda had a very different interpretation. They argued that because Messi and Ronaldo lived, worked, and trained in Spain, they were tax residents. And under Spanish law, tax residents must pay tax on their worldwide income, including global sponsorships. In the eyes of the Spanish government, these offshore structures weren't legitimate business operations. They were sham companies designed for one single purpose: tax evasion. Or in Spanish, fraud fiscal. In 2013, the Spanish tax office launched its first strike. They publicly accused Lionel Messi and his father of evading €4.2 million in taxes. The news shocked the football world. Messi was the beloved golden boy, known for his quiet demeanor. Suddenly, he was facing criminal charges. During the trial in Barcelona, Messi's defense was simple: he didn't know anything about taxes. He testified, "I only play football. I signed the contracts because I trusted my dad and the lawyers, and we had decided that they would take care of those things." His father, Jorge Messi, took full responsibility, stating that Lionel had no understanding of the corporate structures. But the judge did not accept the defense. The court ruled that Messi had exercised willful blindness, choosing not to know how his money was being managed to avoid tax liability. In July 2016, Messi and his father were found guilty of 3 counts of tax fraud. Messi was sentenced to 21 months in prison and fined €2 million. His father received a 15-month sentence and a €1.5 million fine. Under Spanish law, first-time offenders of non-violent crimes receiving a sentence of under 2 years do not actually serve jail time; the sentence is suspended. Messi paid a supplementary fine to completely erase the prison term, but he now carried a criminal conviction. With Messi convicted, the Hacienda turned its sights on Madrid and Cristiano Ronaldo. In June 2017, Spanish prosecutors officially charged Ronaldo with defrauding the tax office of €14.7 million. Unlike Messi's quiet court appearances, Ronaldo's case was a media circus. Ronaldo was furious. He initially threatened to leave Real Madrid, claiming he was being targeted because of his fame. When he appeared in court, he told the judge, "If I weren't called Cristiano Ronaldo, I wouldn't be sitting here." But the prosecutors had the paper trail from the football leaks investigations, thousands of leaked emails and contracts showing the BVI shell company structure. Realizing the risk of a trial that could result in actual prison time if convicted of a larger amount, Ronaldo chose to settle. In January 2019, Ronaldo walked into the Madrid courtroom, smiled at the cameras, and signed a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to tax fraud, accepted a 23-month suspended prison sentence, and agreed to pay a massive settlement of €18.8 million in back taxes, interest, and fines. The Spanish tax war did not stop with Messi and Ronaldo. The Hacienda went on a historic sweep of the football industry. Neymar was investigated over his transfer contracts. Jose Mourinho settled for €3.3 million. Javier Mascherano accepted a suspended sentence. Luka Modric, Xabi Alonso, and Radamel Falcao were all targeted. Even pop star Shakira, Piqué's former partner, eventually settled for over €14 million after a multi-year residency dispute. Spain had sent a clear, thunderous message to the sports world: no matter how famous you are, no matter how many trophies you hold, the state always wins. So what is the real lesson of the football tax war? It isn't just about wealthy players trying to keep more of their money. It is a case study in the friction between globalized wealth and national borders. In the modern economy, superstars aren't just workers receiving a paycheck. They are borderless franchises. Cristiano Ronaldo's brand value is generated in Nike's headquarters in Oregon, monetized by video games in Tokyo, broadcasted to fans in Jakarta, and followed by 1 billion people across the globe. To a financial advisor, it makes perfect sense to house that intellectual property in a tax haven like the British Virgin Islands, where borders don't exist. But physical reality still matters. Messi and Ronaldo had to live somewhere. They trained on Spanish grass, drove on Spanish roads, and slept in Spanish villas. And as long as you live within the borders of a sovereign nation, you are subject to the power of its government. For years, football clubs and players used the Beckham law as a tax shield. But when the economic crisis hit, the shield crumbled under the weight of public anger and public debt. The Spanish tax office proved a fundamental rule of the paper trail: the tax collector doesn't care about your trophies. They don't care about your 1 billion followers. When the whistle blows, they are the ones who control the pitch. The football is real. The joy is real. Just know, when the trophy is lifted this month, the confetti falls on the hosts. The check clears in Zurich.